devotees, welcome to a night stream where we're talking about prisons. Now, I am a correctional officer that was just let go from his job, so therefore I can talk about corrections now. The NDA does not stop me anymore. So, we're going to talk about prisons tonight. We're going to talk about what a correctional officer does. And we're going to also analyze Locked Up Raw. It's a series that's on the A&E network. I believe so. It's on YouTube, so I believe I can show it. I don't know. People do it all the time, so why not? Right? Why not? So we're going to analyze what they're doing in the show and how unrealistic it is or realistic it is. I have 12 years experience in corrections, and I have almost a master's degree in the administration of justice and security, which is in corrections. So I've seen it all pretty much. I've seen people getting their throats slit. I've seen so many things that would warrant like PTSD, right? So thankfully, I'm the type of guy that doesn't really flinch on that stuff. I can take an inmate yelling and screaming in my face, and my response to him is, "Are you done?" And yeah, of course, I myself have cussed out several inmates. Yes, some of them actually deserve like the worst treatment possible. We call what is called a golden inmate when we have an inmate who obeys all the rules, doesn't get in trouble, doesn't want to get in trouble, and just does their time. That is a golden inmate. Now, throughout the years of my correctional career, inmates have been called different names, from inmate, crook, offender, resident, to incarcerated individuals. Incarcerated individuals is what is more a frame of mind of humanity, in my opinion, because that is where you're going to not dehumanize them. Because, yes, they're incarcerated for now. They will get out. Unless they're lifers, and then, of course, they're convicts. But yeah, we're going to dive into it. We're going to dive into Locked Up, and we're going to watch the show, and I'm going to pause it every now and then to discuss, like, the truths or, like, the myths behind a lot of these things, okay? So without further ado, let's get into this. Let's stop the music right there. Let's go to D. All right, right here. Right about there.
2 million people behind bars in America. We open the gates. Lock up.
Don't be weak in prison. That's a downfall.
Facing 15 to life in prison was the scariest thing I've ever had to go through.
When I walked back here, it was just horrifying. It was something I don't even want to recall.
I want to see the outside. I want to see some beauty. Try to forget about this place.
Here we go.
Studies show that women are one of the fastest growing segments of America's prison population. Since 1995, the total number of male prisoners in America has grown 29%. The number of female prisoners nearly 50%. So what?
Not true. That statistic's out of date. I don't actually believe in that statistic because, depending on the state, honestly, in Arizona we had roughly about, I would say, 3,600 female inmates, and the male population, we had roughly, I would say, around 30 to 40,000. So it's just, to me, the women are always the scapegoats to crime, in my opinion.
What does it mean to society and to our justice system? We first visited Valley State Women's Prison in California back in 2000, one of the largest all-female prisons in the world. We returned 5 years later to see if reforms made any difference to a system troubled by overcrowding and the inmates caught in a seemingly hopeless cycle of abuse, drug addiction, and violence.
Everybody tries to make a family here. This is their family while they're here. But then there is another aspect of the population that can be very violent, very cutthroat.
Oh yeah, family is 100% true. In women's prison, I worked at a women's prison for about 4.5 years. I saw women coddling the younger ones and being like, "Oh, I'm your mother hen. I'm gonna protect you." I've seen mothers with daughters. I've seen sisters together. You know, it's really a big family affair when it comes to women's prison versus a male's prison where it's more of a hierarchy, kind of like what's the word I'm looking for? It's segregated. The whites are with whites, blacks are with blacks, Mexicans are Mexicans, and that's how they are. You know, recently they've just done away with the segregation in prisons, forcing them to get out of those groups, but you see it little by little. It's the same thing. You can't kick racism out of prisons, out of gangs. You know, you're not. Yeah, I agree with that. Women's facilities are like a family.
They're making a game out of it. And the more violent it is, the more fun it is for them.
They're not people.
I don't feel I'm a good person because of the things I've done, and I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm very scared.
She's probably Chimo. Probably a child molester. Probably. Scared of things you do. There's two types of people who do not survive in a normal general population prison, and those are child molesters or child abusers. Anything to do with the child, you're not having a good day in prison. Just throwing that out there.
250 miles north of Los Angeles in Chowchilla, California, is Valley State Prison for Women. It was built in 1995 and sits on more than 640 acres. While Valley State's dormitory layout and spacious green yards might remind some of a college campus, razor wire, guard towers, and the electrified fence leave no doubt this is prison, and the 3,600 women who live here are criminals.
When I first came to prison, I was 19 years old, and I'm here for second-degree murder, and I have 15 to life.
Ooh.
Sharon Phoenix is now 41 years old.
Everything was like silent. You had to be very careful in the way you walked and the way you talked and your attitude. You know, I was dealing with women who didn't care. I seen a woman get beaten, and I've seen women OD.
More than 80% of the women at Valley State are in for drug-related offenses.
Used to use heroin. Started at 16 using that.
I'm addicted to crack cocaine.
See, you know, and the sad thing is that these women, they weren't the perpetuator of their crime. It's usually because of a boyfriend or husband who got them addicted to drugs or everything like that. It's never always like pinpoint the woman's fault. Like, yeah, the girl who was here for second degree murder, look into that case. You know, I'm sure that case was where the woman had to fight off an abusive relationship, possibly, and killed her husband, boyfriend, whatever.
I've been using heroin since I was 12 years old.
Substance abuse is an underlying factor of most of the crimes that are committed by the women here because In order to support their drug habits, you end up committing burglaries, petty theft, various crimes that will result in a felony conviction. And as a result, they end up in prison. What you mean you need some more food, huh? Starving like what?
Like, I'm 8 months pregnant and lost.
You're what?
8 months pregnant.
Let me see. Oh, you are?
I'll tell you this much: the warden, that girl in the gray, she would never tour the yard. I've very rarely have seen the warden walk the yards, which is sad.
Aren't you?
Gloria Henry is the warden at Valley State. She's run this prison since 2002 and has been working with women in corrections for more than 20 years.
I have always felt like I have a responsibility to try and return them to the community better than they were when they came in. Because you have a lot of these women who come in here from the time they were little girls. They had nobody to teach them how to be a good citizen, how to be a productive adult. They have no life skills. They didn't learn them. What they did growing up was survived. So when they come in here, there's a lot of things that we need to be able to teach them how to do in order to go back into our communities.
True.
This is the reception area at Valley State, where the new inmates are processed.
Do you have any old CDC numbers? No. Okay.
I just haven't
CDC is California Department of Corrections.
never been. I'm scared. It's scary. I'm ashamed of what I did too.
Right now I'm numb. I don't feel anything. Because I just got here, so I don't really feel anything yet. I don't know how it's gonna be. I don't know what I'm gonna face because I've never been here.
Some of them I see come in, they're disgusted because they're back here again. And we see them, every 3 or 4 months or time and time again.
This is my 5th time.
True. Prisons, unfortunately, in America are revolving doors, because we really don't set them up for success. When I was a case manager, I was always trying to get my caseload to listen to what they wanted out of their lives. If they wanted to be a druggie for the rest of their life, then I'm just going to throw them in a halfway house. That's going to just send them back probably within a week after they OD or bring drugs into the halfway house. I'm not going to help them if they're not going to help themselves, and not a lot of people with my mentality think that way. They're simply just like, I'm the guard, I'm, whatever, just do this, here's paperwork, blah, blah, blah. We don't care about you. I see that a lot in corrections where we have a lot of different views of what an inmate is and what we should do for them and how they should react to them. It was funny because there was a time where this guy was yelling at an inmate to clean up the mess. And the inmate was like, fuck you, I'm not listening to you, shut the fuck up. And I walked over to the officer and I go, whoa, did you ever think to say please or thank you? Well, I don't have to do that. He's an inmate. Okay. So he's going to kick your ass if you piss him off. And then you're going to want to spray him or throw him in a holding cell, right? Well, yeah. Well, then how about we communicate with him and see what that does, right? So I asked the inmate, hey, if you can, please clean up the mess. I would appreciate it. He immediately went over and cleaned up the mess. It's asinine that people have this mentality that these people in prison are, perfect stewards of the law and like perfect attention to detail. But they're not. They have a failure to launch, which means that they have no recourse to their behavior. No consequences have been given to them throughout their childhood.
This is my fourth. Yeah, my first
Fifth
conviction was
time.
a petty theft.
Fifth time.
This is my 4th violation.
I never said I wasn't gonna come back because I'm a criminal. It's
You know, that's the sad thing. A lot of incarcerated individuals feel that way. I'm a criminal, and this is what I do. It's like telling an autistic child they're autistic and they have nothing to do in their life because they're autistic. If you tell a child they're not going to do something because they don't have the skills, they don't have the drive, they don't have the desire, they're not going to have that drive or desire. They're going to fail. That's the problem.
After the initial photographs, fingerprints, and paperwork, the prison's medical staff examines each new inmate to assess her needs.
And that's the only thing that you're under treatment for right now?
The new inmates must spend their first several weeks in an area separate from the general population before being integrated into a permanent housing unit. While segregated, the new inmates are psychologically tested to determine in which housing area they will be placed for their remaining sentence.
Oh, that is the worst system in prisons, is the classification system. Because once again, you're putting a graphic on a person. So if somebody is an STG, which is a security threat group, like a big gang like Soreños or the Aryan Brotherhood or, Old Mexican Mafia, New Mexican Mafia, you're automatically going to put them into a medium custody yard. So the custodies go minimum, medium, close custody, max custody, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to put your traffic violators in a low institutional, right? But however, if that traffic violator somehow gets a hold of a letter written by a Soreño, they automatically make that person a suspect. And it could be just a letter that was not even given to him. He was just found it. Any documentation that has gang related information on it, automatically that person is a suspect. Now, to be validated as an actual STG, security threat group member, you have to have a lot more than that. Tattoos and all that other stuff. And not saying that there aren't those in prison. Of course, there are very horrible human beings in prison systems. Those people should be there, and we should not waste any money, and we should just end their life now, because they are horrible people and they're never going to have a chance to rehabilitate themselves. There are people like that in prison. But the majority are simply people who made a mistake. And to treat them like you treat the max, horrible, inhumane human to somebody who violated parole or violated probation, you're pigeonholing them into a system where you're going to cause a problem. You're going to create a criminal.
Women inmates that we see here who are psychotic, who've lost touch with reality, may have very bizarre and unusual behaviors, hear voices and those types of things. And we would need to treat them, usually with medication and some supportive therapy. We also see people who have major depressive disorders, very sad, maybe suicidal, and these women may need medication therapy and also psychotherapy as well.
Once the correctional staff screens each inmate for medical...
Wow, that is not how we are supposed to escort inmates at all. You do not grab the chain. But yeah, we used to. We used to escort inmates by the chain, but then ACLU threw a lawsuit at correctional prisons and said, do not grab the chain, please. We've had a lot of people get their wrists broken because they decided to get a little froggy. But yeah, mental health services are in prison. However, they are so underfunded, understaffed, that it's just a quick in and out. Hey, are you going to kill yourself? Yes or no? And they say no, and it's like, okay, you're cool. You're good to go. Like, there's this lady who was talking to herself for hours on the court, dancing, just talking to herself, woo, having a good time. Psychiatrist was like, no, she's fine. Let, let her dance, let her have fun. And that's the thing is you never know when a person's going to snap and then actually try to kill themselves. We had a guy, he was cool, calm, collective, and all of a sudden he wanted to talk to a sergeant, and of course the dick of a CO decided to say no, and uh, he started cutting himself with a little bitty razor. So the emergency response team was called, and I was one of the first responders on the team to show up. And I knew this inmate, and I go, hey, give me that razor now. What are you doing? You don't want to do this to yourself. You don't want to do this for other people. I know you're upset. Let me try to talk to them and see what I can do. But I need the razor first. He gave it to me because I had that rapport built with that individual. Yet we have people who are in corrections who are getting promoted who don't deserve that promotion, who don't deserve to be employed because of the fact that their mentality towards these incarcerated individuals is so negative. And that negativity is taught to the newer staff. It's insane.
And psychological needs, as well as security risk, she's assigned to her housing unit. The women live 8 to a room.
When you live with 7 other different personalities and somebody's day has gone wrong, they're bound to determine to turn it around on you.
You better be quiet. You're gonna get it.
Friendships are lost over just one bad day in close quarters.
Inmates not only have to get used to their new environment, but also the prison routine. A typical day at Valley State starts early. At 6:30, breakfast is cooked and served by the inmates under staff supervision.
Yep.
The majority of inmates spend their day in a variety of Valley State's educational, vocational, or rehabilitation programs where they can earn a high school diploma, learn a...
Yeah. The programming in prisons is very underfunded, understaffed. It's crazy on how many inmates I have just sitting around all day, not doing school, not doing programming, not doing anything. Just sitting there, wasting their life away. And I'm like, why aren't you joining a program of some sort? Oh, they're full. They don't have enough teachers. Okay, so what's going on? What are you doing with your time? And of course, they're just sitting there, and with idle hands comes dangerous activities. As it says, right? Idle hands are the devil's playground. Simple as that.
A trade or cope with anger, addiction, and abuse.
When I first came to prison, I started fighting at anything. Anything you said to me would make me, react. If I felt threatened, most of the time I'd end up in cuffs. I've had several police tell me, you're going to be here until the prison falls down. Through going to groups and therapy, I finally learned that wasn't the way to do it. I need to learn how to use talking skills instead of my hands. And with more help and more good functions, I have the chance to go home.
There you go.
Life here is about order and routine. By 10 p.m., it's lights out. But there are some places at Valley State that never go to sleep. Coming up.
This is how it is. 24/7. You have to be prepared for anything.
Doing time at Valley State's prison within a prison. And later,
When I was a little girl, I could never imagine myself being here now today, or even coming to a place like this.
we check back with someone who was just out of her teens when we first met her 5 years earlier and could spend her life behind bars.
It's sad but true.
Because I didn't like
of violence or drug use inside the prison will bring an inmate here to the Administrative Segregation Unit, or ADSEG. It is Valley State's prison within a prison.
Yeah, we have a couple of
While
those.
ADSEG houses those on temporary lockdown, the other side of the building, known as the Security Housing Unit, or SHU, is for serious offenders who are considered a more permanent problem.
See, and that's one thing that the ACLU has been really focused on, is the isolated, what's it called? Solitary confinement. The solitary confinement of an incarcerated individual is very detrimental to their mental health. However, I do think of it as a tool. When you put someone into solitary confinement, you shouldn't give them an audience. They are there to think about what they did around the prison against the rules. To be fair, a lot of the rules in prisons are given to the inmates in a handbook, which is the worst thing you could do for an incarcerated individual, because here we have a person who has a failure to launch, right? We have somebody who has like the incapacity to do the right thing. So we have to teach them, like they're babies, to do certain things. Clean your house, brush your teeth, wash your clothes. These are very different things that people will do, and even take a shower. I know a lot of inmates who just refused to take a shower, and they stunk to high heaven. I seriously thought we were going to have to Super Troopers his ass and throw him in the shower with lye and fucking fire hose him, because it was that bad. But yeah, lockdown units or like segregated housing, it can be rough. It can be really rough. They don't come out of their cells unless they're handcuffed or full restraints. They take a shower with the restraints on. It's a lot of activity that goes on there. They feed in their houses. They get the trays back. It's very, very secure.
I was fed up. That's what I was. Inmates were afraid of me, and they put a shade under my eye.
That happens a lot too.
Inmates in the SHU are kept in their cells almost 23 hours a day. They are allowed out for only 3 showers a week and 10 hours in the recreation yard. Life in ADSEG, or SHU, isn't just a more intense experience for the inmates. Correctional officers like Diane Vasquez are under the pressure of dealing with a different brand of criminal.
Working here in ADSEG SHU is very challenging. You deal with a lot of physical abuse, mental abuse, emotional abuse. It just depends on how much you let it affect you.
Gotta have some thick ass skin.
You hear yelling, you hear cursing, you hear banging, kicking on the doors. This is how it is 24/7. At nighttime, they don't sleep. Anytime you're dealing with any of the inmates in here, you have to be ready to react to anything. 136. So you always just gotta be.
Yeah, the worst thing in segregated housing is when they get their hands on a cup from the night shift or something, and they throw urine or feces outside of that little trap door there. When you open it to give them their food or anything, they will throw feces at you. Thankfully, I have never, in the 12 years of experience working in corrections, I have never had piss or shit thrown at me. It's usually the Kickstarters, people who like to get a rise out of the incarcerated individuals and try to provoke them to fight. Those are the type of people who are getting assaulted.
Be prepared, know your options when you're dealing with different situations. You always have to think 2 steps ahead to prepare for whatever can happen.
An arsenal of non-lethal weapons like tear gas and rubber bullets provides stopping power in case of
Those rubber
incident.
bullets hurt like
To
a
provide
motherfucker.
added security for the officers, meals are delivered through slots in cell doors. Random cell searches are an effective way for officers to find weapons and other contraband before they can be used against staff and other inmates.
Well, I'm just checking some of the unclear containers, the contraband, because we can't see through this. So we can take our light, and if there's anything in here besides what's supposed to be in here, we'll be able to see it.
Yeah.
There's an unknown liquid in this.
Smart.
That's a shampoo bottle. There should be shampoo in that. There's not shampoo in that.
Yeah.
We use mirrors to see where we don't want to put our hands without being able to see. We don't want to get stabbed or poked.
Although the officers search for all sorts of contraband, they are first and foremost on the lookout for weapons.
It could be as simple as this right here. This is cellophane.
Yep.
Around a pen filler.
It's a tattoo gun.
Stiff. It could be used as a stabbing weapon, so it's better that we take it.
When it comes to crafting homemade weapons, an inmate's determination can be deadly.
Right here is what we call
All right. I got to point out what he just did. What he just did was he did the slide. You never do the slide when you're searching a cell because you're going to get stabbed by a needle, by a homemade weapon, or anything. You crimp.
fashion lock, and what it is it's a cut-off pillowcase. It's made into a handle, and the inmate braids it to where they can hold it real tight. And what they do is attack
locking a sock.
Another inmate. Another common weapon for inmates to use would be a toothbrush. You melt the plastic down, and they put a razor in there, which acts
Oh, wow.
as a slashing device.
Damn, that's a weapon.
Have been melted inside of a lighter, and you hold it.
Keeps the inmate safe. Keeps the officers safe.
Yeah.
So if we can stop it here, everybody's going to get to go home safe.
You know, the sad thing is that correctional officers don't have enough time to actually do a good search to find homemade weapons or any other thing that would be contraband. So in a 12-hour day, you know, you're supposed to do 4 searches. You're supposed to let them out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. You're supposed to let them go to the programming, whatever that may be. You're supposed to be doing 30-minute checks every 30 minute going around the entire unit. Takes roughly about, I would say, takes roughly about 5 minutes to do an area check, right? So in that 5 minutes you're doing an area check, then you're doing, you're trying to do a cell search, but then somebody says, hey, I need to go out to programming, or hey, I need in my cell, or I need this, I need this, I need this. And you're the only one in 64 inmates, you know, to do all these searches. And oftentimes you're going into a cell that is jam-packed with clothing, with canteen items or commissary, that you do not have the time to go through each individual item as they did there on that table with all their items out there. You don't have that time. Now, if that's your only job to do searches, then hell, you know, let search team, boom, that's all you do all day is searches. Then you're going to get contraband off your complex. Perfect. You know, one thing that we used to always do in Arizona was every 3 months there would be a unit that would be hit with searches, and people would go and okay, and then we would try to get the contraband off the units. You know, it wasn't mandatory that you had to do so many searches throughout the day. You know, it's crazy to expect one person to do so much for one unit.
Not all prisoners are in ADSEG for disciplinary reasons. Cynthia Menendez and Linda Donahue are here
They're scared.
to protect them from their enemies.
Yep, they're scared.
Our life has been put on the line, you know? back here because my life was threatened, because my son testified and took somebody away from their family. They were going to take me from mine.
Ooh.
I've been back here a little over a month, and it's just getting harder and harder. I just felt like my whole world was crumbling. When I walked back here, I could just see horror. Every time you're taken out of your cell, you're handcuffed, and it's very depressing. It's very humiliating.
Linda Donahue was assaulted at
Yeah, and that's true. You know, I knew a lot of people who would go to segregated housing right before they're going home because they don't want to deal with all the politics and bullshit that happens on the unit. So, you know, I can understand that it's dehumanizing in a segregated unit, but you're at the end of the day, you have to put the worst of the worst back there. But nowadays, people are just using it for a time to get away from the unit, to decompress.
a nearby prison and was shipped to Valley State for her protection. Now her attacker will be arriving at the prison, so Linda has been moved to Ad Seg for her own security.
Yeah, she slugged me. Blood all over, was choking on blood all over the room. I finally was able to get up. She had me pinned. I was able to get up and bang on the door for the officer. I'm scared of dying. I've seen people beat worse than what I got beat.
For both women, the isolation of Ad Seg has provided a chance to reflect on their time behind bars.
It was a reality check for me. It was really a reality check, and maybe this is what it took for me to have to realize that this is not where I want to be.
You're told not to be weak in prison. Don't be weak in prison. That's a downfall. I don't know how to be strong.
I just had that one habit and I just couldn't break away from, you know. It was like taking away the loneliness.
Violence and drugs still take their toll inside Valley State. Darlene Acevedo is serving time for petty theft. But as a drug user, she was sent to the Ad Seg for feeding her addiction on the inside, which led to an attack on another inmate. She's been in Ad Seg for 21 months.
This is the first time that I've been sober in my whole life since I started using drugs, since I was 18. So that's why I met my reality check. This has made me know me, the real person that I really am.
Darlene's facilities are basic, with a few luxuries like lotion, spices, and a television. She spends her time reading, with only pictures of her family to keep her company.
They give me hope. When I look at my pictures, I know that I have a purpose.
Today, Darlene will go before a committee to determine if she is fit to leave Ad Seg.
She was originally placed in ASU on 12/12/04 from Facility D for battery on an inmate. Regarding the assessment of the SHU term, ICC found no factors in aggravation. It is further recommended that we release her to Facility D.
All right.
The meeting brings good news for Darlene. She will return to the general population.
Everything's gonna be fine. I'm gonna make it.
When we return...
Now, does she, though?
This place makes you
I hope so.
5 years later, we catch up with 3 killers who could spend their lives at Valley State.
When I was a little girl, no, I could never imagine myself being here now today, or even coming to a place like this. When I was 16, I was in juvenile hall fighting my case. Still didn't barely thought of me coming to prison. To be so young, convicted of second-degree murder, facing 15 to life in prison, it was the scariest thing I've ever had to go through. I didn't know what I was coming to, what it was going to be like. I've heard many stories of prison, so I was scared, I was terrified.
When we first met Janice Jaycott, she had just turned 21. She was sent to Valley State to serve 15 to life for second-degree murder.
15 to life.
Drug deal turned into a robbery, the robbery turned into a murder. The girl turned state evidence, and the guy was on the run, and he ended up dying about a year and a half later.
Oh,
this place
damn.
makes you hard. It can make you bitter. I don't think it rehabilitates you.
That is a big statement, because she says, I don't think it rehabilitates you. And that's the biggest debate, whether prisons are rehabilitation centers or if they're just cages for undesirables. Whether prisons are obsolete, whether we should have prisons. That it's a big debate because of the bad apples that get into corrections with a big chip on their shoulder. And they're like, I am the law and you have to listen to me. You're you're going to ruin your prison. If any warden has any sense, they would understand that they have to do better in their prisons.
90% of the women go out harder than what they come in.
Yeah.
Janice was pregnant when she was arrested. Her son was born 6 months prior to her being sent to Valley State.
I don't know what it's like to be a mother to him. To me, I'm just the woman who gave birth to him. I'm not his mom. My stepmom and my father have raised him.
Janice is now 26, older, wiser, and looking toward the future.
4 years ago, I was a wreck. I was real rebellious. Didn't care about nobody. I don't even think I gave a damn about myself. To where now, 4 years later, I'm more mature. I care what happens to me.
Janice also cares about the child she left behind. She hopes to be paroled within 5 years and at last be a mother to her son before
Her teenage son?
I think as he gets older and he comes to understand and realize where I'm at and I'm not home taking care of him, I think he's going to be real rebellious about it. And he's not going to want to listen to nobody, and I'm terrified he's going to make the same mistakes as I did.
Well, if your father is raising him, the same man who raised you, chances are that kid is going to prison. The sad statistic is that from inmates come future inmates, meaning that children of incarcerated individuals are going to be incarcerated one day in their life because they see that. They see that life. Hey, it's a kitty. They see that life that was created and how seeing their loved one behind bars. Sometimes it's one of those kickers that go, you know what? I'm not going to be like that. And I'm going to do everything I can not to be like that. But statistically, inmates are going to create children who are going to be inmates themselves. Sad but true.
At Valley State Prison, there are 385 women serving life sentences.
Actually, 4 years ago, I couldn't see ever leaving here. I couldn't see leaving here. Now, as my board date approaches, I see that there might possibly be a light at the end of the tunnel. Only in the last year or so have I felt like maybe this is what God has planned for me, to stay here for the rest of my life.
Marta Yulin is also a lifer at Valley State. She was convicted in 1998 for vehicular manslaughter. She drove drunk and killed 4 people.
Drunk driver.
To die myself. It didn't only affect the 4 people in that car, but myself and my 2 children don't have their mother right now. The effects ripple on down and affect so many people that it's unbelievable. The pain will never go away.
The funny thing is that we have so many mothers against the drunk driving and the SAD, and it's still doesn't stop people from drinking and driving. No matter how many videos people see, no matter how many people see people go to prison for this, they go, hey, I'm drunk. I want to be more drunk. So let's go to the store and get more beer. Stupidest thing you could ever do. I've always said, when I haven't a sip of alcohol even, I don't drive, period. And that's not because I'm in law enforcement. That's not because I have, vast knowledge of what happens to people It's because I walk like a duck. I'm a pigeon-toed person, you know, pigeon-toed. So therefore, I can't walk a straight line sober. So if I have alcohol on my breath, dude, I was kicked out of a club for just walking. And the bouncer was like, "You need to leave. You're too drunk." The fuck? I was drinking Dr. Pepper. you know, but that's the whole thing is you never know, like what you're going to do if you're under the influence of alcohol. Not even one beer. Like I know so many people who have one beer and they're like, "Oh, let's go, let's drive." It's like, what the fuck are you doing? It's like you're not supposed to drink at all and drive your vehicle. You're insane.
Marta is serving 15 to life. When we spoke to her in 2000, she was convinced that prison was the end of the line. But she may be eligible for parole as early as 2010 and longs to reunite with the family she left behind.
I have a very supportive daughter who's 20, who's putting herself through school, and I have a 23-year-old son in Iraq right now who should be coming home soon. He's having the hardest time dealing with me being here.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we've basically had no communication since I've been in prison. But I'm faithful that God's going to turn that around. I know that God's always there. He wraps his arms around me and comforts me and tells me that he's going to see me through this and that he's forgiven me because I can't forgive myself sometimes.
It's funny to me that, it's whatever. People find God, whatever. You want to praise God, whatever. Do you. You want to believe in Santa Claus? Believe in Santa Claus. I don't really care. What boggles my mind are there's two unforgivable sins that you can do, and they are not forgivable. You cannot be redeemed. And one of them is denying their Lord, their God, and murder. Murder is an unforgivable sin. So if you think you're a murderer and you're going to be forgiven from a God who literally says in the book that murder is the unforgivable sin, dude, what are you doing? Like, what's the point? But I get it. Whatever gets you through the night without cutting your wrist. Sure, believe in it. Believe in the spaghetti monster for all I care. If it makes you happy, then all for it. But so often I hear prisoners be like, "Oh, I found Jesus today. I'm forgiven of my sins." And then they go and fuck around and like bring in hooch, which is homemade alcohol, into the prison. And you're like, "Wait, whoa. I thought you were forgiven of your sins." "Oh, I'll be forgiven of this transgression." It's like, you're out of your fucking mind.
I become a very angry person rather than say somebody who's looking at things and finding things better. There's nothing rehabilitating here.
Yeah, I wouldn't put older people in prison.
Really.
When we last saw Barbara Erdman, she was 65 years old and 1 year into her 10-year sentence for murder.
My husband had left me after 30 years.
Whoa!
And I was having a very tough time with it. And all of a sudden I decided I was going to be me again. And I went over to his house. He had moved out, and I went over to his house where he lived and wanted to tell him to keep whatever pension and stuff he had and just sign the house over to me.
You wouldn't do it.
And he got very irate and started beating me up, but when I backed up, his gun was on the counter. He carried it once in a while, and I picked it up and tried to scare him. And he backed off, but then he came at me. And I pulled the trigger, I guess. I really don't remember it clearly.
See, that's the debate as well. You know, here's a woman, 30 years of marriage. Husband goes, yeah, you know what? I'm going to go find some hussy. I'm done with you. Kick rocks. She goes over, and I'm sure there's more to that story. Probably cussing, yelling, screaming at him, and everything like that. He gets in her face and starts beating her. Now, if that is 100% true, that would be a crime of passion, and she wouldn't be serving life in prison for that. You know, that the justice system is so skewed. So, like, if you're not famous, if you're not, and this is a white woman, you would think white privilege would protect her to some degree. But, how many people have gotten away with so many things because of their status in life?
It went off and he died.
Barbara had more difficulty adjusting to her time in prison than the others. Barbara will soon be 71.
Whew.
No, this is not life. I'll tell you that. You
Barbara's going to kill herself, and you need to be put on suicide watch.
It's a nightmare. I still have not gotten over the shock of being here. And everything is so different. People are so different. They're not people. And I think I was still in shock at that time, and I didn't really realize what was going on and what it would be like to be in here. And it's horrible. It really is. I don't laugh as freely. I don't live, really, is basically what it is. I try very hard to keep my spirits up, but there's sometimes that you just can't. If it wasn't for my family, my granddaughter, who I've got pictures of, I wouldn't make it. I don't know what would happen.
Yeah. Wow.
As these women get closer to freedom, they remain mindful of the fine line between getting out and actually moving on.
When I get out of prison, I'll be the kind of person that carries a good job, be the best mother I could be. That's my number one priority, is to be a mother to my child. I cannot bring those children back. I cannot bring the gentleman and his girlfriend back. And I can't wipe the tears of the family members or my own family members. But I can keep trying to move forward and do the best that I can do for others.
Yeah.
And try to replace it that way. That's the only way I know how.
That's what I need to do, is just focus on the fact that in 2 years I will be out. And maybe there's something I can do on the outside. I want to see the outside. I want to see some beauty. Try to forget about this.
Whew. Damn.
Coming up, babies behind bars. And the women who have to give them up.
Oh, yeah. Happens a lot. Was paroled in 2007. Well, that's good. Good for you. Barbara was paroled. Good for you. Only one of them.
Medical care for all prison inmates is notoriously inadequate. At Valley State Prison for Women, health care is indeed one of the facility's biggest challenges.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing. In one of the prisons I worked for, there were actual nurses who would refuse to give medication to inmates because they didn't hear the call for a pill call, or they were in the shower and that's their bad. It's like they missed their medication. It's like, dude, you guys are the ones that put them on this medication. So therefore you should be held liable for anything. You shouldn't just like be like, oh no, yeah, he missed his pill call. He's not going to get his psych meds. Oh, thanks. So I have to deal with his craziness. What the fuck? I was floored. I was floored when this nurse told me that. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Get the fuck out of here.
Challenges. For prisoners, it's also been a hot button issue for years. Each day, just after breakfast, the inmates on medication line up for their daily doses. All drugs are regulated, psychotropic, prenatal, even cold medicine. The inmates have long considered health care to be one of Valley State's biggest problems. Despite being fully operational on our first visit in 2000, the facilities were understaffed and overburdened. There were less than 10 physicians to care for more than 3,500 inmates.
The medical care here sucks.
Medical sucks. Medical sucks. I've been here 8 years, never had a physical. Won't give me a physical. They said because I'm young and I'm healthy, I don't need a physical.
Because of standards that are set by the community, there has been a significant increase in the funding for the healthcare services for women. And we have been able to add to our staff, both in terms of physicians, nursing, mental health staff. Is it still perfect? No. Do we have enough staff? No. Do we have vacancy issues and problems we're working with? Yes. But we are significantly better off in terms of our ability to deliver quality standard of care.
The funny thing is, we talk about the revolving door of prisoners, and it's also a revolving door of staff. The sad thing is, the administration expects way too much for certain types of officers and don't require much from other types of officers. And the ones who are ignoring and simply just want to get the paycheck, they're advancing to higher positions. Yet the ones who are actually on the ground dealing with inmates, communicating, have a good rapport, they rarely get chosen for promotions because that's not the mentality that some prisons want in their atmosphere. She's talking about how medical care is like, it's getting better, and it's getting worse. Depends on what staffing you put. If you put nurses who don't really care for inmates, you're not going to get good staff. Can you imagine going to a hospital and saying, hey, can I get a cup of ice? And being told you don't need ice. And then the nurse walks away. It's like, what kind of care would you expect? Now, granted, inmates don't pay for their medical care. So, to say, oh, you don't get much because you're not paying for it. You're not contributing to the bills of what we have to give you. That's a system that was set up. Inmates get medical for free, yet free people have to pay for medical. Interesting, isn't that? So if you want to get medical, if you want to get new teeth or brain cancer removal, whatever, go to prison. They'll pay for it, 100%. That's the biggest problem we have, is society will never look at medical in prisons as a necessary thing because society still views inmates as those undesirable people.
Today than we were a year ago or 5 years ago.
Most of the difficulties stem from the inherent differences between male and female populations. Above all, pregnancy.
Pregnancies in a prison provide a very unique problem for us because many of the women that are pregnant are in very poor health. They're ill when they are pregnant. They come here and they're depressed. They have a number of issues going on in their lives.
Approximately 175 babies are born each year to inmates at Valley State. Building B1 houses the expecting mothers.
having twins, I don't know. I think I'm having a boy and a girl. I hope that's what I want because I have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old at home. So.
When an inmate is ready to deliver at Valley State, she's brought to nearby Madera Community Hospital. Correctional officers are posted outside the delivery room. But that isn't the only thing that separates these moms from the others in the hospital.
When the babies are delivered, the mothers don't get to bring them home.
A
No.
family member must pick up the newborn within 48 hours. Otherwise, the baby is placed in foster care.
Yep.
This is my son, Manuel. He was the firstborn, and he weighed 1 pound and 9 ounces.
When inmate Amelia Gutierrez was
Wow.
sent to Valley State for a parole violation on an assault charge, she was 7 months pregnant with triplets.
Triplets?
I had a really rough experience being here. You know, I had a high-risk pregnancy. This is no place to be.
No.
Amelia's delivery was dangerously premature. She had to be airlifted to a hospital capable of providing adequate care to her new family. But soon after delivering the triplets, Amelia was given traumatizing news.
I'm very grateful because, you know, from the triplets, 2 of my children are still living.
Oh.
And my son unfortunately passed away, which was really hard because I couldn't be there for him like I should have been. The hardest thing was to lose my son and, you know, just being away from my children, period. It's
True.
really tearing me up inside because, you know.
But you shouldn't have done what you did.
I feel like I'm the worstest mother. This is not my home here. I'm not calling this my home. My home is with my children.
An unfortunate fact of life at Valley State is that 85% of these women are mothers. They display their photos on cell walls or lockers.
This is Hunter and Sierra. These are my girls. I love them so much.
One of the more sobering differences between men and women's prisons is that many of the inmates who end up here never see their loved ones again.
In the women's case, they are very frequently abandoned. There are not men in their lives that cared about them enough to stay with them during this difficult time. They come here and their families don't take the time to bother and come and see them. There are not as many men out there that want to communicate with and write to and send love stories and love letters to women that are locked up.
Yeah, it's true.
It's Saturday.
You know, that's one thing I found was in the male prisons, women are flocking to the bad boy, right? You know, I get so many people who have letters upon letters from different women, and it's just like, it's crazy that we have that mentality that we have to go after the bad boy, right? And the men are just as bad, right? They think that they're going to get everything in the world from this woman who's incarcerated. There was a woman in Oklahoma. She was writing for men. She had a husband. She was writing for men and saying, I would love you. I want to be with you. I want to have babies with you. These 4 men were diehard, sending her money, sending her gifts, everything like that. Well, time came and she was released from prison. Her husband was outside waiting for her. And 4 men came to pick her up at different times, thankfully. 3 of the men were like, fuck this, we're done. We're not going to deal with you. You're stupid. You lied to us, whatever. One of them was like, no. Followed the husband and her home to their home. For the next few months, he studied her patterns of where she went and what happened. And eventually, she was kidnapped by this man, taken to a home in the basement where he cut her skin off and Buffalo Billed her. Face, skin, face, everything. It puts the lotion in the basket type shit. Seriously. And eventually they found her body and the man was arrested. And I was just like, it's crazy that that happens in prisons. You know,
Usually a prison's busiest time for visits.
Did that spin?
Yet inmate Anza Heathcock and her family have the room to themselves.
Without them being here, I don't think I can make it through this. You know, just looking forward to their visits, looking forward to their letters. You know, brightens my day. It really does.
Anza's fiance and 3 boys are visiting her.
Mr. Lot. Just happy that we can go see her today.
You're supposed to get married when she gets out.
All the time she'd be gone, it's like we never get to talk to her or anything else. All we do is get to write her. Hopefully when she gets out, she can probably come to our football games that we're.
You know I will. Be there with everyone, videotaping it. You know I will. Just can't wait for me to get out of here and start living our lives like we should now. I know that's my goal. I'm very blessed to have somebody take care of my kids. I know where my kids are. A lot of women in here don't even know where their kids are. They don't have family. Our family just kind of shut
she
them
had a
off.
stroke
You
or
know,
something.
You know, I'm fortunate enough to where I got someone who loves me, and it will come 200 miles, whatever, how many miles come see me.
Well, we're gonna be here next week.
You better be here every week.
Anza Heathcock was released from Valley State Prison in November 2000. Her sons are teenagers now living at home with her, and Anza is still in a relationship with her fiancé.
Oh, that's good.
Although advocacy groups sponsor bus trips to bring families to see their mothers, such trips are rare. Barely 1%
Yeah, they are.
of inmates have a visitor on any given day, meaning Anza was among a precious lucky few.
See, and the problem is that these advocacy groups are hit with barriers from the prison, whether like somebody had too many write-ups, they can't go do that. You know, somebody had this, then can't do it. You know, to deny somebody to see their family over a write-up is asinine. It's crazy to me. Just like in one prison I worked, they were taking away good time, which is the parole date, right? They're extending their parole date or not. They're taking away their good time for having their cell in an unsanitary manner. But yet they're not teaching these individuals how to keep their cell sanitized, right? It doesn't make sense. You teach somebody how to make their bed, they're going to make their bed. You know, you teach them the importance of having a clean cell, they're going to have a clean cell. It's like, you know, parents who tell their kid, clean your room, and offer no help whatsoever are not going to have a clean room. Parents who teach their kids how to clean their room, how to get it organized, and say, this is how it should look. This is what it is. You're going to have a clean room. You know, it's just, you drive the importance of a clean house to someone, they're going to listen.
Makes life in here livable, you know, gives me something to look forward to.
When we return, while some look to God for love in
It's
prison,
funny that they always have to
others
put their
look
hands up.
to
They're
each
like,
other.
It's funny. I don't know. I never understood that.
One of the basic philosophies of the penal system is repentance. So it's no surprise that at Valley State Prison for Women, so many inmates turn to religion.
We come to worship you. We come to praise your name. Anyone that comes to God usually comes because what motivates them is pain. Emotional pain, spiritual pain.
I've come to know the Lord in here, which is something very, very, it's strong in me. I feel so much peace.
Whatever makes you not kill yourself, I guess.
I know He forgives me for being a rotten person. I know He forgives my sins. And I know I could do anything now.
There are several religious options for the inmates. From this Native American ceremony led by a Cherokee healer.
Connect to your center. We send our blessings out to our families.
Wow, a Cherokee healer.
Only God is in that place.
To this Catholic service where inmates are anointed with holy oil.
Be healed.
You're healed.
So many of our inmates have never been touched. The touching part is a real key for them. The very fact of the anointing and the blessing, the very fact that I can touch them on their forehead and on their hands, I get this sense of relief for them, that somebody really cares about them enough not to touch them in a violating way or an abusive way.
Because so many inmates have been physically and mentally abused, they come into Valley State unaccustomed to nurturing relationships.
One of the things that happens in the prison system for women is that women will sometimes build themselves a family. And so a woman will become a father, a woman will become an uncle, a brother, and they will be pulled together into a family structure.
They, decide this is an older lady, I look up to them. So this is like my mother figure. They start calling her mom.
Yep.
This is, the lesbian female. This is my dad, whatever.
Lorena Diaz is serving 6 years for manslaughter and an assault on an officer.
Something that they don't get at home, something they've never had. And in here, the relationships are much more close because you're so enclosed and you see these people every single day, no matter what you do, So you build these bonds with people.
Many of these inmates become so close that their relationships go beyond mere support.
Oh, yeah.
Women have a much stronger need for touch and to be close to each other and to talk and to have close relationships.
Married in prison? Yes, I'm married in prison.
To who?
To a woman.
You got married?
And many of our women prisoners who would not be gay or lesbians in the free world are in fact drawn to each other here.
Gay for the stay.
Family-like concept, and that ultimately may lead actually into lesbian sexual relationships.
When I first came to prison, about a year after I was in prison, I started being with women, probably for affection. Now I don't be with women because it wasn't who I was. I was being lonely. I didn't know how to keep myself occupied. So I was with women. It's about being close to somebody, having somebody give you love. It's not, even some of the lesbian relationships in here, a lot of females come in here and they have husbands. They have 5 children at home or whatever, but they come here and they receive love from somebody, you know what I'm saying? They find somebody who they care about, who cares about them.
Coming up,
happens a lot.
Inmates look to their future.
It's going to be a whole new world,
Both inside and outside the prison walls.
Part of me doesn't ever want to be part of society.
Whew.
I would love to have the women leave this prison better off than they were when they came in. That is my goal.
Okay.
That is our mission.
When MSNBC visited Valley State in 2000, the recidivism rate was 55%, despite officials' hopes that it would decrease. That number has held steady. If the trend continues, more than half of these women will come back.
I'm 24
Damn.
years old, and I've done 6 months here already, and I've come to terms with myself about changing my life and my lifestyle and the friends and the people that I hang around with in order not to come back to this place. This place is really not a bad place. They have a lot to offer you here if you take advantage of the situation. They got school. They even have college courses here that you can take and things like that. You get yourself into something positive, you know what I mean?
We can provide all the education and academic programs in the world, but the individual who comes through our gates has to be ready to accept those programs, has to be ready to say, I need to change who I am and how I live.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. See, a lot of people who come into prisons, they are violent, they're bitter, and when you say, "Hey, you got to take this program," what kind of answer do you think you're going to get? Probably a negative one, right? And that's exactly what we do to these incarcerated individuals. We force these programs on them without their say so, with the threat that they're going to have things happen to them in prison. It's not really good for rehabilitation. You know, allowing them to come to these programs is one way to actually allow them to get a benefit from it.
To help give inmates a marketable skill upon release, Valley State has 15 vocational programs, from welding to landscaping to cosmetology.
Oh, wow.
Inmate Marlene Stolzmark
Don't
used
have
to
any of those in Arizona
The outside world, well,
or Nebraska.
I ran a lot from the law. I sold drugs to get by. You know, it was easy money. Instead of, I didn't really know too much of doing anything except running the streets. And this is, when they came here, they asked me, well, what are you interested in? You know, I said nails, hair, and they put me in this program. It was good. A lot of us that's here really don't know nothing except what we've learned to bring ourselves here. If we had known a trade or something, we might have did that instead of doing what we did to get here.
Not necessarily. Just because you know a trade doesn't mean you're going to go stay out of prison. The more you're into a trade and the more you see the potential of laundering money or potential of having a front business and doing illegal activity in the back, pretty high. Money is the root of all evil, and we have always said that since the beginning of time. Money makes people do stupid ass things, and it's asinine that we as a society don't look at this and go, "Hey, if we make things cheaper, there's quite possibility that people aren't going to commit crimes because they'll be able to afford things." Often crime is committed from poor people because of the necessity to live. You know, there's so many people who have drug addictions because they resort to drugs because they want to not feel reality. And if you make reality less constricting, you're going to have a better time of rehabilitating somebody with mental issues that are struggling to get by, to feed their family.
End of her 10-year sentence, Marlene hopes to open a nail shop of her own.
I'm hoping that it'll give me a normal life where I don't have to look over my shoulder and wonder, am I coming back? I don't think anybody really thinks about coming to prison and having to stay here. But it's the choices in life that we make that bring us here. Hopefully I don't make that same mistake to come back.
It's hard.
I came in my very early 20s. I'm pushing into my 40s now. My sentence was 15 to life.
Inmate Kristen Camp was second-degree murder. She works in the print shop. She dropped out of school in the 7th grade, but earned her high school diploma here at Valley State.
Yeah, we have a print shop in Nebraska.
Any type of learning a trade is going to give you a sense of accomplishment, boost up your self-esteem, give you job skills that you can incorporate.
Give you lots of money in prison too.
Christy has been denied parole multiple times, but she hopes her new skill will make a difference if she leaves Valley State.
When I think about paroling, it's going to be a whole new world. I've been in almost 20 years. I'm looking forward to residing in the community and being a community-oriented citizen, a homeowner, living the American dream just like everybody else.
American dream is dead, unfortunately. Sorry.
That's what I plan on doing.
Because a large part of the population at Valley State is here for drug-related offenses, the substance abuse program remains many inmates' only hope.
Good afternoon, family. My name is Vanita.
Hi, Vanita.
Substance abuse program is a joke, unfortunately, in a lot of states because it's taught by individuals who look at inmates as crooks, as not going to be able to change. or their classes are so lackluster that they're not really learning anything. They're just spending time, in classes, and there's no substance.
First of all, I want you ladies to put your legs down and I want you ladies to relax.
Vanita Lee used to be a drug addict herself. Today, as a counselor, she has a unique appreciation for the struggles the inmates face.
It hurts me. It hurts because I feel irresponsible. I feel powerless. I feel like, unworthy. But, I'm working on that right now. You know what I mean?
How has it made you feel when you see other kids with your other peers with pictures and they're showing pictures and you're not showing any pictures of your kids?
It's like an emptiness,
These women are part of Walden House, Valley State's residential community for substance abusers. Today's topic is the effect the inmates' addiction has had on their families.
Me and my kids don't have like that relationship or that bond that a mother and child's supposed to have.
So right now, if you can tell your kids anything, what would you tell them?
I would apologize for not being the parent that I was supposed to be. I would tell them that I love them very much. I would tell them not to make the same mistakes I did.
Fortunately, that's a learned behavior.
Because you guys did some processing, I want to stroke the ladies that was here for support. It's important that we let these ladies know that the work that they're doing is very important, because some of these ladies have held this stuff in for like 20, 25 years, and it's so hard for them to be productive out there in society because they have all this garbage inside, and they finally come to a place where they can release it and be safe about doing it.
I lost my mother while I was locked up. I'm not real close with my family right now because the trust was lost.
Some of these ladies haven't cried in many years, and when we see the tears, we know it's cleansing them and it's helping them become that productive member of society. And it's very important that we hug them. That way they know that they're doing the right thing and it's okay to cry.
All right,
All right.
Yes, single file. Okay. And what I want you to give me your whole name. Are you guys ready for your last pat down? Oh, look at that.
These women are being paroled. Yet despite their hopeful smiles, odds are the majority will be back.
Unfortunately.
What the parolee will leave with is their personal property that they have.
The funny thing was, there was a girl that was getting paroled, and the person who picked her up smelled like weed. Marijuana. Straight up. Just smelt like weed. And she was in there in prison for drugs. And I'm like, wait, you're going to get released by someone who smells like weed. And you're going to stay sober. Okay. Good luck. Of course, within the next month, she was back in prison, unfortunately.
And generally $200, unless they've worked somehow and saved money, or have had family or friends that have sent money for their trust account to give them something for a start. But generally it's $200.
For many, the prospect of leaving Valley State on parole doesn't bring hope, but fear. For inmates like Lorena Diaz, a life in prison is all they know.
I'm scared to get out, I'm scared because I don't know what I'm going to do, and I know how different I am now. And it's
a lot of problems.
It's a weird experience.
I don't feel I'm a good person because of the things I've done. They want you to be that good girl, and then they'll let you loose and, let you become part of society again. Part of me doesn't ever want to be part of society again.
I think some of them actually like it here. And they get their families, they create their families here, their friends. It's like a reunion. It's nothing new to them, and it's their comfort zone.
It's traumatizing. It's real traumatizing just to look 19 years down the road where I'll be eligible for parole. I'll be too old. I won't be able to collect SSI. Any vocation I take now.
The good thing is that society has been better with elderly people who are released from prisons, they're automatically on SSI. They're automatically on welfare and benefits and everything like that. Unfortunately, we have to rely on a social system that's broken already to look after these people. You know, these incarcerated individuals who are released from prison, you would think they would have a social base that would protect them, but oftentimes their families are ostracized them so much that they're not able to get through their life without them.
Won't be any good by the time I'm old enough to parole from here. Or, you know, technology changes every day. I have no idea what half the cars look like out there, let alone a computer. So it's going to be scary.
On our return to Valley State, we found life remains very much as it was on our first visit 5 years earlier. While there may be new programs and increased funding in some areas, fundamental issues like drug addiction, recidivism, and abandonment are unchanged. That's our report. Thanks for watching. I'm John Siegenthaler.
That's insane. That's insane how freaking, like, it's so crazy how society picks these people and pins them against the world. You know, that's the biggest problem that we're facing in prisons today. And that's why prisons fail. And that's what I'm writing my book about, is that here's why prisons fail. This. You know, so many people have an attitude towards incarcerated individuals that is filled with hate, resentment. Yet they're just as guilty of committing crimes as these people who are incarcerated. They just haven't got caught. You know, it's funny that, you know, I was fired for not following a policy. Yet this policy was set up to put me in danger. And that's why I'm fighting it. And that's why I'm going to get my job back, and I'm going to get back pay. And it's, to me, there's so many things in prison where they can do so much better. Yet we do not have the right society for it. You know, so many people are looking at prisons as a place to keep our undesirables, to keep the people from hurting other people outside of the institution. You know, what is a perfect prison? You know, that's exactly what I'm going to be discussing in my book. You know, and when it does get published, I will, you know, let you guys all know, of course. But it just goes to show that we have a society that needs growth. It needs better attention to mental health, to overall care. The more we care about someone, the better their life is going to be. And the more society pins you down, and the more society makes the poor even poorer, you're going to destroy the whole nation of what we build up. That's it. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. And yeah, that's basically the bottom line of prisons. And that's what we deal with. All right, guys, I'm going to get to bed. You guys take care of yourselves and each other, and we shall see you tomorrow. Take care.